James Carville, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here with you.
So, as you say, winning is everything stupid. And it does look, from where you sit, that Donald Trump won everything. He has won the popular, the electoral, the Senate, potentially the House. He dominates the Supreme Court and has really made inroads with demographics that used to be overwhelmingly for the Democrats. So how do you explain, particularly for an international audience, the biggest swing to the right in the United States since Ronald Reagan?
Well, first of all, winning is everything, and it's everything. It's above loyalty. Without winning, there's nothing. And of course, the country wanted change, and the vice president's campaign decided they would not offer that. And they asked Vice President Harris what she'd have done different than President Biden, and she said she can't think anything.
Okay, well, so hold on, because I have that. I have that, and I want to play it. James, hold on, because I'm going to play it, and then you can describe it. Let's just play this bit.
A flood of illegals, skyrocketing prices, global chaos, and Kamala wouldn't change a thing.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
Nothing will change with Kamala.
So, James Carville, that was a Trump ad. Would you say that was, decisive and extremely effective?
I do. I think that answer was the decisive moment of the entire campaign. But Christiane, we should not overinterpret it. This is not a 1980 realignment election. He's not going to get 50% of the popular vote. The House, they'll probably win it by a razor thin minority. So we don't need to it was a bad night. People wanted change. We resolutely refused to give them a different direction than they wanted, which we could have done. We could have had an open primary process, and we have staggering talent in the party. We could have demonstrated that. We chose not to do this. I mean, a lot of these decisions were made at the top level of the Democratic Party, and they were not very wise decisions.
James Carville, you say don't overthink this. It's not as big a swing as 1980. Yeah. But Trump can genuinely claim a mandate from the American people. I mean, let's face it, the convictions, the impeachments, all the other things that have been going on for all this time. And he can say, and the assassination attempts, I survived all of this and I'm here. He can take it as a mandate if he wins all levers of government, can't he?
Well, he can take anything that he wants. What the Democrats need to do is be an opposition party. And the opposition, it starts right now. Because I can tell you, this transition and the inauguration is going to be like everything else in Trump land, a giant grift. It needs to be exposed, and it needs to be exposed pronto. And Democrats have to have a mechanism in place to do that. But I don't know how you claim a mandate if you don't get 50%. You can say, I won the election, and you can certainly say, I told people I was going to do all of this, and a majority of them voted for me anyway. But I would be very reluctant to swing the M word around here. I would say he won the election, but I'd be... Okay, go ahead.
No, I understand what you're saying. But as you said, Trump has shown us that he can create a reality. And what he's done with this mandate that he apparently thinks he has is so far... put all the loyalists in, and it's a very, it's a huge sort of signpost to the very hardline policies that he said he would do. Well, what can the Democrats do about it?
Well, what you do is, you're no better than anybody. You live in a place where you have an opposition party. You act like an opposition party. You do not have power. So you do research, you launch investigations, you make talking points, you get people out front, you organize the opposition, you point out the weaknesses in what they're doing. And they're going to do things that people never dreamed of. And when they do, you have to be there with an alternative. But you're an opposition party. Opposition parties do not have power. We need to get over that. But we have the power to expose, we have the power to propose alternatives, we have the power to be different. We have to exercise that power. But I can't sit around and mope around about an election that's already over. I got to think about the next election, like 2026. And we got to think about how do we organize this opposition? What is the rallying point? Where does the opposition start? I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions here that need to be answered and answered pronto.
So with that in mind, can I ask you about one of the issues that was brought up by the Trump campaign, and some, Democrats were also uncomfortable with it, the idea of woke and the culture wars, right? This was most definitely, again, ads by the Trump campaign. But Jon Stewart, who does a little digging, as you know, put together a very interesting compilation of quite a few Democratic candidates' ads. And he said, I didn't see anything woke here. I'm going to play it for you.
I only have one problem with the woke theory. I just didn't recall seeing any Democrats running on woke shit. These were the commercials I saw for the Democrats.
Sherrod Brown is working to fix our border crisis.
Mondaire Jones is working to secure our border.
Pat Ryan is restoring order at our southern border.
I'm Laura Gillen, and I'm here at the border of Nassau County. We're 2,000 miles from Mexico, but we're feeling the migrant crisis almost every day.
So what do you make of that compilation? And was woke overdone?
Right. Well, I'll tell you exactly what I make of it. I was in the Sunday New York Times that a lot of people read, that I'm sure you read, in Maureen Dowd's column. I said, I'll give Harris credit. She didn't use any of the woke language, but this is like trying to wash clothes that's got smoke all over them. You can't get the stench out. And you could ask Senators Manchin, Senator Casey, Senator Brown, Senator Tessa, if they don't think that defund the police had an adverse effect on attitudes toward the Democratic Party. My God, you're right. It was so stupid, no one wanted to bring it up, 3 years later, but the residue of it just stuck with us. And you got to read exactly what was said, exactly what I said. And it's going to take more than one cycle to get this stench off of the Democratic Party. And it's a stench of the highest order, let me tell you.
I'm going to ask you about the stench in a moment, but I first want to say, because you brought up Maureen Dowd, and there is also an idea that America is still not ready for a female president. But last spring, you said, a suspicion of mine is that there are too many preachy females dominating the culture of the Democratic Party. Do you stand by that, females?
Would you look at our male vote? Would somebody just take a look at how we did with males and how we did with non-white males and tell me that the Democrats don't have a messaging problem, that their message comes across as too feminine? I mean, of course I was right when I said that. I don't think there's not a person in the world I've talked to that doubts that I'm right now.
Okay, James.
I mean, I say provocative things to get a provocative reaction. But are somebody going to really tell me we don't have a problem with male voters?
Well, that's really interesting
because you're telling me something I'm completely unaware of.
No, I'm going to read you the stats. As you know, well, you know the stats. 1 in 3 voters of color voted for Trump. Trump carried Hispanic men by 10 points. Trump improved his support with younger voters compared with 2020. And you're right, he did win the male vote. So I just need to understand this because what are you saying then that Democrats need to do about the so-called gender gap? What should they do?
Well, first thing, they could have done a lot of muscular economic messaging that we didn't do. We could have been for increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour. We could have talked more about raising taxes on incomes above $400,000 and using that money to help young people buy a house. We can certainly shovel the entire identity politics about 50 feet in the ground and bury it. I mean, you can start by doing things like that. You could have got out in front of the crime issue, which, by the way, the crime rate in the United States is down historic amount by 30%. But we were not able to talk about crime because the woke police would not allow that. And one of the great accomplishments of the Biden-Harris administration. So but there's a lot of things you can do, and you can change your language around. You know, don't use coded language, and it's going to take, like I said, it'll take one cycle before we can wash this smell off of our shirt. But I think it'll a good chance that we act correctly, it'll be gone by 26, and it'll be long gone by 28. But please, don't anybody like infer to me that we did well with males, because we did not.